The wind over Fort Reliance smelled of salt and rust. Seagulls circled the coastline crying like old ghosts. The base had grown quiet, too quiet for men who once lived by the roar of engines. Henry Cole, 78, leaned on his cane near the maintenance hangar. His jacket still carried faint patches, where metals used to be. Before him stood the beast of his youth, an old Sherman tank named Rosie. Once, she had thundered through hell with him. Now she sat silent, a monument of dust and iron. Henry's hands trembled as he brushed off the grime. "Still here, girl," he whispered. "Still waiting." He didn't know why the Army called him back after 40 years. Maybe they wanted to clean the hangars, or maybe, like him, they just couldn't let go. That morning, a convoy of young cadets arrived for training. Among them stood Major Patrick Keene. Sharp uniform, colder eyes. He saw Henry and frowned. "Who let the janitor touch government property?" The cadets laughed. Henry didn't answer. He'd heard worse on the battlefield. Keene stepped closer, tapping the old tank. "You say she still runs." Henry met his gaze, calm and steady. "She runs when someone respects her." The laughter stopped. Something in the old man's tone cut through the room, like a blade of memory. Keene crossed his arms. "All right, Mr. Cole, prove it. Start her up." Henry smiled faintly. "If I start her, Major, you'll listen. Not to me, to her." The cadets gathered as Henry climbed inside Rosie. Every movement was slow, deliberate, a ritual. His fingers found switches that had slept for decades. Click, whir, silence. Then, a deep, mechanical breath. The tank groaned, coughed, and roared to life. The hangar shook. The cadets froze. Major Keene took a step back. Henry's voice echoed through the rumble. "You hear that, son? That's history breathing." He shut the engine down and climbed out, hands black with oil. Keene didn't speak. For a moment he looked less like a soldier and more like a boy who'd just seen a ghost. Later in the mess hall, whispers spread. The old man who revived the Sherman, the relic that still lived. Henry sat alone, stirring his coffee. He wasn't proud, just tired. Memories weighed heavier than metals. A young mechanic approached. "Sir, how did you do it?" "Simple, kid," he said. I remembered her voice. "Machines never forget their owner." "People do." The boy nodded, not fully understanding. That evening, Major Keene found him outside by the pier. The sunset bled across the water. "You made a fool out of me," Keene said. Henry didn't look up. "No, I reminded you that steel listens only to those who earned it." "You talk like tanks have souls." Henry smiled. "They do. We put them there. Every time we fight, every time we lose someone, we leave a piece behind. The metal keeps it warm." Keene stayed quiet for a long time. Then he said softly, "My father served too. He never spoke about it." Henry's gaze stayed on the horizon. Maybe because words can't carry what the heart still hears. The next day, Keene surprised everyone. He ordered the cadets to attend a special demonstration, led by Henry Cole. When Henry entered the yard, the laughter from yesterday was gone. He stood beside Rosie and began to speak. "I was your age when I met her. I thought war was about orders. But it's about trust, between men, between machines. You stop trusting. You stop surviving." He told them about the mud, the noise, the silence after battle. About the moment when he realized bravery wasn't in charging forward. It was in coming home and facing your own reflection. The cadets listened, even Keene. When Henry finished, he patted the tank again. "She taught me something none of my officers did. The enemy is not always out there. Sometimes he's inside you." The yard was silent. Only the flag above them moved, whispering in the wind. That night, Keene came to see him again. No arrogance this time, just a man seeking something he lost. "Mr. Cole," he said quietly, "you ever regret coming back here?" Henry took a deep breath. "Every day, and every day I don't. Because as long as someone listens, those we lost aren't really gone." Keene nodded. For the first time, he saluted. "You've done more for this base in 2 days than I have in 10 years. Henry chuckled. "Then listen better, son. That's how you earn your rank." The sun set behind them, turning the old tank into a shadow of gold. And for the first time in years, Fort Reliance breathed again. The storm rolled in from the Atlantic that night. Waves crashed against the pier, echoing like distant artillery. Inside the hangar, Henry Cole stood alone beside Rosie. The lights flickered, throwing long shadows across the steel giant. He ran his palm along the cold armor, tracing every dent and scar. Each one had a name, a place, a memory. He whispered softly, "Still with me, aren't you?" The metal seemed to hum back in the silence. Early the next morning, Major Keene found him again. The major looked different, his uniform pressed, but his pride no longer ironed flat. He carried 2 cups of coffee. "You didn't show up for breakfast, sir." "Didn't feel like watching kids feed on rules." Keene smiled faintly. "They're asking questions about you." "Good. Means they're starting to think." The major set 1 cup down beside the tank. "They want to know how a man like you still stands straight after everything." Henry took the coffee. "You don't stand straight, son. You bend. Then you learn how to rise without breaking." That afternoon the cadets gathered again, but this time there was no laughter, no mockery. Henry stood before them, a thin silhouette against the open hangar door. "You boys think discipline is what makes a soldier. It's not. Discipline keeps you alive, but loyalty, that's what keeps you human." He pointed to Rosie. "You ever seen a man cry inside a tank?" "I have. Because even inside all this steel, your heart doesn't stop being made of flesh." Silence. One cadet swallowed hard. Another looked away. Later, Keene followed Henry outside again. The wind carried the sharp scent of oil and rain. "What really happened out there, Mr. Cole?" "Which time?" "The last one. The one you never talk about." Henry looked out at the sea. The horizon was gray, endless. "We were surrounded. No air support, no retreat. Just 4 of us and Rosie." He paused. "We made it through. But not all of us made it back." Keene's voice lowered. "You mean... I came home with medals and left my brothers inside her." He tapped the tank gently. "She remembers them. That's why I could never let her rust away." Keene didn't ask more. Some truths were too heavy to touch. Days passed. The rumor spread across the base. The tank that listens. The man who taught it. Even General Lang heard. He arrived one morning without warning, his convoy rolling in like thunder, a decorated hero in his own right. A man who once lived in headlines, not trenches. He shook Henry's hand. "Sergeant Cole. I've read about your service. Didn't expect to see you here. Fixing relics." Henry smiled faintly. "Relics deserve care too, sir. They've carried more than you think." Lang studied him for a long time, then turned to Keene. "Organize a demonstration, tomorrow. I want to see what this legend of yours can do." That night, Henry sat by the pier again. The waves glowed under the moonlight. Keene joined him, nervous. "The general wants a show. He's not easy to impress." "I'm not here to impress him." "Then why agree?" Henry smiled, eyes tired but steady. "Because steel remembers only when it's heard. Maybe it's time to let her speak one last time." Keene nodded slowly. He didn't fully understand what the old man meant, but he felt it, deep down. The morning came. A crowd gathered, Cadets, officers, the general himself. The air was sharp with anticipation. Henry climbed into Rosie. The hatch slammed shut, echoing like the closing of a book. Inside, everything smelled the same. Oil, dust, memory. He touched the controls like an old friend's hand. Outside, Keene stood stiffly beside the general. "He hasn't done this in decades, sir," Lang scoffed. "Then this will be brief." But the next sound silenced them all. A deep roar. Alive, defiant. Rosie came to life again. Smoke poured from her exhaust like breath from a sleeping beast. The engine thundered. The ground shook. The general's face changed, slowly. Respect replaced doubt. Henry's voice came through the comms, calm and unwavering. "Permission to show you how memory drives steel, sir." Lang didn't answer. He just nodded. The tank moved, not fast but proud. Every turn was precise, every sound deliberate. The cadets watched in awe. Keene felt something stir in his chest. Pride, maybe, or guilt. When the show ended, Henry climbed out, standing tall despite his age. Lang approached him, jaw tight. "Where did you learn to handle her like that?" Henry smiled. "In places the maps forgot, sir." The general studied him, then extended his hand. "Thank you, Sergeant. You reminded this base what respect sounds like." Henry shook it firmly. His hand trembled, but his gaze did not. And when the crowd saluted, even Keene noticed something strange. The old man didn't salute back. He simply looked up, whispered, "I already did." The base didn't sleep after the demonstration. It breathed, slow, heavy, awake. Word spread beyond Fort Reliance. A local paper ran the headline, "Old Tank lives, so does respect." By noon, film crews asked for access. By evening, strangers waited at the gate. Major Patrick Keene moved through it all like a man walking against wind. He signed forms, denied interviews, argued with public affairs. He kept one thought constant: protect Henry, protect the moment. Henry Cole didn't ask for protection. He arrived early. He left late. He spoke to cadets as if time itself had a seat on the front row. "You don't win because you're loud," he told them. "You win because you're steady. You don't lead because you point," he added. "You lead because you carry." The cadets took notes. Some wrote too fast. Some just listened. Those were the ones Henry watched. General Robert Lang called Keene to his office. The room smelled like old cedar and old memories. Lang stood at the window, hands behind his back. "He won't last forever, Patrick. None of us do." "I know, sir." "Then use him well while he's here. Not as a mascot, as a teacher." "Yes, sir." Lang's reflection stared out at the parade ground. "There is one more thing. Pentagon wants Heritage Week." "The PR thing?" "The funding thing," Lang said flatly. "They want Mr. Cole to lend his voice." Keene's jaw set. "He doesn't lend, sir. He gives, or he doesn't." Lang glanced over. "Then let him decide." The next day, the hangar doors rolled open to families. Little hands pressed against the safety rope. A boy in a baseball cap leaned so far forward, his father caught him by the back of the shirt. Henry stood beside Rosie, the big, raw shape of his youth. He didn't grandstand. He told small truths. "This dent here? That's where a winter mortar kissed us and changed our route. This patch of weld? That's where a good man's last 10 minutes kept 4 of us alive. This seat, this is where I learned how to feel a machine thinking." A woman with a microphone eased in, hair perfect against the fans. "Mr. Cole, just a quick word for Channel 7. Keene stepped between them. "Ma'am, the schedule's posted." She smiled the way people smile when they don't mean it. "The public has a right to see, yes. Keene said. Not to stage. Henry placed a hand on Keene's sleeve. Let her ask one, he said. One that matters. The reporter blinked. All right. Mr. Cole, why come back now? Why not let the past rest? Henry looked at Rosie. At his hands, at the boy in the cap. Because the past didn't rest then. It bled so today could walk. The least we can do is walk honestly. The microphone lowered. No follow-up. Sometimes truth uses all the oxygen in a room. That afternoon, heavy equipment rolled in. Flatbeds, straps, a contractor crew hired to reposition exhibits. One forklift nudged too close to Rosie. The strap slipped an inch. Metal moaned. Henry moved before anyone did. Stop. Kill it. The foreman frowned. Sir, we do this all the... Kill. It... Now. Keene barked, and the engine died. Henry stepped under the strap, set his palm flat against the hull and listened. He murmured something the way a father murmurs to a frightened child. You're pulling her wrong, he told the foreman, voice even. She's belly heavy. You'll twist the frame and never know why she drifts left after. The foreman looked to Keene. Keene nodded once. Do what he says. They reset the rigging. Henry guided with 2 fingers. The tank shifted, obedient as a breath. The foreman scratched his head. How'd you see that? Henry shrugged. She told me. A pair of cadets exchanged a glance. They weren't sure whether to grin or salute. They did both, badly. That evening, Keene found Henry on the pier again. The sky was an iron bar cooling to red. They sat without talking, which is the best kind of talking. After a while, Keene said, My father, he worked supply, never saw combat. He always stood taller around real soldiers, but he never said why. He didn't need to, Henry said. We don't grade courage, we recognize it. He died in silence, Mr. Cole. No stories, no warnings. I've been angry at him for that. Henry breathed in salt and wind. Maybe that was his mercy, son. Some burdens don't break until you pick them up. He kept his hand on them as long as he could. Keene stared at the water. Something old softened in his face. Thank you. Don't thank me, Henry said. Thank the ones you still have time to listen to. General Lang didn't visit the pier. He came to Henry instead, late when the hangar lights hummed like tired bees. He walked slowly around Rosie, fingertips grazing paint and weld. I know who you are, Sergeant, Lang said finally. Do you? I was a second lieutenant the winter you held that crossing. The radio traffic. Your voice. It got a lot of boys home. One of them was me, Henry nodded once. Then we're settled, Lang shook his head. We're not. I should have found you years ago. I let the headlines write my memory. I'm here to fix that if you'll let me. Henry looked up. Fix it by teaching, General. Not by thanking, Lang straightened. Tomorrow we start living history as a permanent track. Cadets, NCOs, officers. You talk, we listen. No cameras unless you say. Henry's mouth quirked. Then, we might just make soldiers again. Night brought rain, hard rain. The kind that makes roofs admit they're imperfect. Sometime after midnight, a sensor tripped in the East Bay. A door alarm blinked. A guard called it in. Keene answered, because he was still awake. He drove across the base, wipers fighting water and fatigue. The guard met him with a flashlight and a shrug. Could be the wind, sir. Could be kids. It's never the wind, Keene said. They opened the hangar. Lights flickered. A shadow moved where shadows shouldn't. Keene lifted the flashlight. Stop. Military police. Hands where I can see. The figure froze, then bolted deeper into the building. Another shape peeled off the dark and ran the other way. Two of them, the guard whispered. Call backup, Keene said, already moving. He turned a corner and felt history breathing. That low, recognizable smell of fuel and old rubber, not memory. Something real. A cough, a whir, a stutter that wasn't the storm. Keene broke into a run. He knew that sound. Everyone on base knew that sound now. He hit the main bay and saw it. A form inside Rosie. Hands where Henry's hands should be. A kid's silhouette behind the glass of the hatch. "Out of the vehicle! Now!" No answer. The starter kicked again. Keene reached the side ladder, slammed his palm on the hull. "Don't you touch her!" The engine coughed, and caught for half a second, then died. Silence slammed down like a door. Somewhere a tool clattered to the floor. The second intruder slipped behind crates. Keene climbed fast, rage beating time with his boots. He wrenched at the hatch, and it barely moved, locked, from the inside. He looked through the periscope glass. What he saw made the anger drain out of him in one cold rush. A face, sweat, fear. A cadet, 18 maybe, crying without sound, both hands shaking on the controls. Keene put his mouth to the metal and spoke softly. "Son, you're going to open this hatch. You're going to put your hands on the rim. You're going to breathe." The boy stared back, wild-eyed. The starter twitched. Behind Keene, the guard shouted, "Sir, movement!" A second kid sprinted for the side door. Keene didn't turn. He kept his voice level. "Don't make her your first mistake. Make her your first lesson. A beat. Another." The boy's fingers uncurled. The hatch clicked, lifted an inch, stopped. Keene slid his fingers under and heaved. The lid gave way. Rain hammered the roof. Somewhere, thunder rolled like distant armor. The cadet's breath came in ragged sobs. "I didn't mean... I just wanted to..." To what? To feel what he felt. Keene stared at him, a lifetime between blinks. "You can't steal another man's memory," he said, "but you can destroy it trying." Boots slapped concrete behind them. More guards, more light. The second kid was already on the ground, hands up, eyes hard with shame. Keene climbed down slow. He looked at the tank, at the rain, at the two boys who wanted legend without weight. Then he made a choice. "No arrests," he told the guards. "Sir? Not tonight. This goes to discipline and a Mr. Schroer. Cole. Not to headlines." He sent the cadets to the wall and made them stand facing the cold brick until the storm softened. No yelling, just time. Time is the strictest instructor on any post. He checked Rosie himself. Hands careful, system safe. The rain eased. The guards drifted back to their rounds. Keene remained, alone with the tank. With the problem no manual teaches, how to hand reverence to boys raised on clips. He placed his palm on the armor the way Henry did. He didn't say a prayer. He said a promise. "I'll fix this before he sees it." Lightning stitched the horizon. The bay lights hummed. At the far door, movement again, slow, deliberate. Henry Cole stood there in a raincoat, water dripping from the brim. He had come because some men never sleep when thunder sounds like artillery. He took in the scene with one long look. The open hatch, the shaking cadet, the wet floor, Keene's wet eyes. Henry didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then he nodded once, as if he'd been expecting this all his life. "All right," he said softly. "Then we teach them proper," Keene breathed out. "In the morning?" Henry shook his head. Now. The hangar smelled of rain and metal when Henry Cole stepped inside. The two cadets stood stiff beside Rosie. Their uniforms were soaked, their eyes red. Keene waited near the door, hands clasped behind his back. He said nothing. Neither did Henry. For a full minute, the only sound was the dripping of water from the rafters. Finally, Henry spoke. His voice was steady, not angry, not cold, just honest. "You wanted to feel what I felt, right?" The boys didn't move. Henry walked closer. Every step echoed against the hangar's concrete floor. You wanted to feel courage, the rush, the noise, the power. He paused right in front of them. But courage doesn't start in the tank. It starts when you're terrified and you move anyway. The older cadet swallowed hard. Henry's eyes softened. You thought you were stealing history. You were trying to understand it. I get that. But history isn't a film reel. It's a wound that never heals right. He turned to Rosie, resting a hand on the cold armor. You don't touch her unless you're ready to hear what she remembers. And trust me, she remembers too much. Keene watched as Henry took off his cap and placed it gently on the tank's surface. The gesture was slow, reverent, a soldier's kind of forgiveness. Then Henry looked at the two cadets. You'll be here at dawn, both of you. We'll clean her together, every inch. The younger one started to nod. Henry stopped him. Not to erase what you did, to understand it. He turned toward Keene. You'll supervise, Major? No lectures, just silence. Let them listen. Keene nodded. For once, silence felt like leadership. At dawn, the sun split the horizon into gold and iron. The hangar doors rolled open. The air smelled of oil, soap, and redemption. Henry stood with them, sponge in hand. He didn't speak at first. He just scrubbed the old tank like a man polishing memory. The cadets followed his pace, awkward but earnest. Keene leaned against the doorway, arms folded, watching the lesson unfold without words. When they finished, Rosie shone beneath the morning light. Not new, not young, just proud again. Henry stepped back, breathing hard. That's what respect looks like. Not parades, not medals, just care. The cadets exchanged a glance, the kind that meant something stuck. Later that week, General Lang returned. He found Henry sitting outside the hangar with a thermos and the Atlantic wind. Heard you had a break-in, Lang said. Henry smiled faintly. Kids looking for ghosts. I gave them chores instead. Lang laughed once. You're exactly the kind of trouble this place needs. He sat down beside him. Washington approved the Living History program. You'll stay on as senior instructor. I'm not much of a teacher, Henry said. You're exactly that. The kind who doesn't need chalk. Henry's eyes drifted to the horizon. I'll stay until she's gone. Then maybe I'll rest too. Lang followed his gaze to Rosie shining under the sun. He didn't argue. That night, the base gathered for the ceremony. Cadets, officers, even civilians filled the hall. A small brass plaque waited on an easel near the podium. Keene stood at the microphone. His voice carried clear and low. We call this heritage, but what we really mean is memory. Tonight, we honor a man who gave both to this base. He turned toward Henry. Sergeant Henry Cole, veteran, teacher, stubborn as the ocean, gentle as steel. Applause filled the hall. Henry stood, nodding once, humble as always. Lang stepped forward, unveiling the plaque. It read, Fort Reliance Heritage Wing, dedicated to Sergeant Henry Cole and Rosie, who proved that courage never rusts. Henry's throat tightened. He wasn't a man for tears, but his voice cracked when he said, Thank you. Not for the words, for the silence you finally learned to keep. Weeks passed. Visitors came. Stories spread. Henry still walked the hangar every morning, still polished the same spots, still spoke softly to Rosie. But one morning, Keene found him sitting beside the tank, head bowed, cap in his lap. Peaceful. Still. The base went silent that day. Even the wind seemed to pause. Lang ordered the flag lowered. Keene placed Henry's cap on the driver's seat inside Rosie. It stayed there, under glass, under light. Every cadet who passed through Fort Reliance stopped, if only for a second, to look at it, No sign told them to. They just knew. Years later, Keene, now a colonel, returned to the hangar. He was older, grayer, slower. The plaque was polished. The air smelled the same. He placed his hand on Rosie's armor. The metal was cold, but familiar. He closed his eyes. "I kept the promise," he whispered. "They listen now. They really do." A faint creak answered him. The kind only old machines make when they settle. He smiled. "Yeah, I know. You miss him too." The colonel stood there a while, not as an officer, but as a friend. When he finally turned to leave, he looked back once more. The light from the door hit Rosie's hull just right. For a second, it looked like she was shining from within. And maybe, just maybe, she was.